extortion ring in Wahoo murder probe. And that story is on page 20. And that's a Star this morning.
Let's talk money matters now on Business Daily. Kenya's Africa trade surplus hits new high of 121 billion Kenyan shillings. It's on Business Daily. More on that is export earnings jump to 324.79 billion Kenyan shillings in 9 months. And fast drop in imports expenditure since COVID peak. And they say 20.86% growth in export earnings in the period under review. On the bottom scroll of Business Daily, SGR January loan payments up 14 billion on weak shilling. On the right side, that ticker there, Kenya Power unpaid bill hits 35 billion Kenyan shillings. Another bit there matters companies. EPZ farms in buyout deal ordered to retain 7,000 workers. And in matters markets, CMA to test investment deductions from salaries. But an interesting read on page 13, or rather page 19, on their Life magazine, how we achieved 2023 fitness goals. Fred, how did you achieve your 2023 fitness goals?
No,
you basically paid for the gym membership, but
it is my New Year resolution. Let's just put it that way. This New Year, something will happen.
Something.
You watch this space.
How many days till 300 and?
At least 352 days to Christmas. That's enough time for you to change the way you look in readiness for some more damage come Christmas time. Yeah.
So we review it again after.
Let's review it next year.
All right.
Yes. So as we cross over to regional matters, let's start off with the East African, the weekly paper. And the big headline on the East African today, why Uganda-Kenya fallout may not last. They are important trading partners in spite of spats, and their divorce would impact intra-EAC trade. Besides, Kampala's options may prove more expensive. Elsewhere, Somalia row with Ethiopia could shake East Africa. It remains to be seen how it will play in Nile upstream states as Mogadishu allies join in. Elsewhere, Sudan recalls Nairobi envoy. Shuttle diplomacy by paramilitary leader Hemeti rallies Khartoum, divides opinion on peace. Rattles opinions on peace deal. So yes, those are the main stories on the East Africa. Now we can comfortably cross the border to Uganda.
To Uganda, okay. I had.
Okay, it's okay. You can start with Tanzania.
Right, this tab has decided to misbehave. All right, let me just switch here to Uganda. On the Daily Monitor, landlords can break into rented premises. That is a big story. The green light ruling by High Court Judge Musa Sekana now gives landlords the right to break into and reoccupy premises whose tenants have failed to pay rent for an unreasonable long time.
Note, this is in Uganda.
Yes.
To get it right.
Landlords in Kenya, this is not in Kenya, it is in Uganda. But I'm curious though, what the specific time when they say unreasonably long time. How many months, how many years probably. On page 6 is where you'll find that story. The highlights there, Rushoro's cathedral marks 100 years, much as anniversary. They have the pictorial at the bottom there. On the top scroll on Daily Monitor, healthy living, mental wellness checks can reduce suicide cases. And much as Dr. Yul, airport's epidemics warrior, killed in car crash. And Bugingo returns to church amid tight security. But an interesting story in Uganda, though, on pages 4 and 5, ministers to get etiquette training ahead of NAM. Yes.
Interesting. You see, even our president had mentioned something about some senior government officials needing some training in etiquette at the beginning of his term. I don't know what happened with that story. Anyway, let's cross over to Tanzania. Kule Bongo, tuangazie gazeti la Mwananchi. Habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Mwananchi, Show aonya usanii. Ni kuhusu miswada ya uchaguzi, ataka ya uchaguzi mkuu wa mwaka 2020 yasijirudie. Askofu Kasala aonya wanasiasa kusaka uongozi kwa sangoma. Masuala ya Sangoma kule Tanzania ni makubwa kweli. Kwingineko, mali za askari ziuzwe alipwe msaidizi wa Nyerere. Habari nyingine kwenye kurasa wa mbele Mwananchi, wanafunzi 211,000 wakacha mitihani kidato cha pili la 4. Matters education as well. Masuala ya elimu pia yakipewa kipaumbele kule Tanzania kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Mwananchi. Habari zaidi, danadana ulipaji fidia unavyowatesa wakazi Kipunguni, na kwingineko sababu za wawekezaji kuchagua bandari ya Dar. Hilo ni gazeti la Mwananchi.
Tukisalia Bongo, on the Citizen, on the front page of the Citizen, they're focusing on matters business, really. The big story is tourism grows swiftly as economy steams ahead. And they talk about tourism receipts jumped by 37.5% to $3.3 billion in the year to November 2023, while tourist arrivals rose by 27% to 1.797 million, according to the Central Bank's Economic Review for December 2023. More is on page 2. On the bottom scroll there, major issues expected to preoccupy the East African community in 2024, increasing productivity, value addition and support for smallholder farmers are some of the key issues that are expected to preoccupy East African community member states in 2024. Matters education, Form 2, Standard 4 pass rates up, 200 have results nullified. And finally, at the very top scroll there, empowering journeys and future endeavors on page 4. Hilo ndio gazeti la The Citizen. Rejea nchini Kenya, masuala ya caricature. Can see, Fred, you've already picked up one on the Standard page.
Yes, we do have, on page 12 of the Standard, we do have the cartoon there. Matters NHIF and a patient lying on a hospital bed. But this patient, I think, is political interest management and getting an IV intravenous medication from Graft Incorporated. Matters corruption and the management, or rather mismanagement, of NHIF and the Health Insurance Fund. But I think the cartoon on the Daily Nation, page 15, is more interesting.
Yes, and it really speaks to what Kenyans are talking about right now. It's a whole new year, and even the whole new tax that largely affects the farmers, the whole 10% of what their produce taking to that they actually harvest and all that. And now all this. So this is Kobon Mwananchi, a caricature of a Kobon Mwananchi there, looking at the wallet and palm on the forehead and worried. His matters housing, schools, those taxes, medicine, I believe unga kopale, fuel, but there's no money. The 60 days of January, I hear this.
And the People Daily, on page 10 of the People Daily, Stano also captures matters back to school and how much schools are wringing parents dry. And there's a parent there who's complaining and saying, ouch, because he's been squeezed out of all his money. Yeah. Issues to do with education funding. The fact that school fees has gone up. The same thing, there's things that are needed for school, bags, uniform. There's Form 1, people are joining Form 1. There's JSS, people are joining junior secondary school. People are joining universities. And the parent is actually under pressure. It's only day 8 of 2024. Remember, January has 67 days.
Oh, yes. And even as a parent out there, you're watching us this morning, we'll be having this conversation so that you can really be enlightened to know how to tackle this particular school year. But then, what are your thoughts about taking your child back to school? Talk to us on our socials at TV47 News on X, my TV47 KE on Facebook, mine at Eringita_.
at Fred Indimuli on X. And after the break, back to school. That's a big discussion this morning. We'll be having Akelo Misori, Secretary General Kupet, Olive Mbudhia, former director, Deputy Director, KICD and Education Consultant, and Education Researcher Peter Amunga in studio for that conversation. Do stand by for that. You're watching Morning Cafe. Welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV 47, and the discussion this morning is back to school. And with us to help us discuss this, Olive Mbuthia, former Deputy Director KICD and an education consultant. Olive, Happy New Year, karibu to TV 47. How has the year started for you?
Okay, Happy New Year to you. And I think the year has started very well. At least you thank God for your health, and of course your mind is still bright enough. And we hope God can make things look better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you sound optimistic, but looking at the dailies this morning, because and I know you have the two papers in front of you. And the Daily Nation, the big headline is "Cash Crunch as Schools Reopen," and on the Standard, "Trouble in Education." And this does not really portray that kind of optimism that you share. What is the issue? And it is back to school this week. So much is happening this week. Today, in fact, the biggest expectation is that the KCSE 2023 exam results could be released even as early as this morning. This morning as well, we see JSS, the intern teachers insisting that they will not report to work. Schools are complaining that they are yet to receive proper funding from the government. Teachers are complaining that the JSS curriculum is being messed up with so much being combined. And parents are wondering, okay, so what should we do? In as far as education matters are concerned, these dailies seem to be telling us the truth. In however much you may want to sound optimistic,
Yes.
what really are we looking forward to?
Okay, maybe personally I like to be optimistic as a person, because I feel good. You know, it's always good to look forward to good things. But let me say, deep down inside me, I think I feel very pessimistic, especially in having worked in the sector of education for many years, seeing the progress we made over many years. You know, governments coming in and wanting to do something about education and progressing. But now I see a dive. Of course, in terms of education, I'm very, very pessimistic, because I don't think we are focusing. I think if I was to prioritize, I think education would be one of my top things in government. Because I remember when I went to school, most of us came from very, very poor backgrounds, but parents would save up. Some of them were peasants. They would grow their crops and be happy that that money would put their children to school. And of course, whether they lived poorly, they lived with the hope, the optimism that somehow their children will live a better life. But I don't think it's the case now. You know, with the load that we have given parents, you know, the parents are all the people who are employed, you know, the overtaxation. We were hoping that this program of free school, you know, starting from what President Kibaki started, that is free primary, needed to go to free secondary. Many countries are now even having free education in universities. But that's not the focus we have in this country. You know, we are focusing on, I don't know, housing. And I don't know, I don't want to live in a mansion and then I can't take my child to school. And you see, it's not just about the amount of money that you're spending in school fees, it's also transport. How much will it cost you now to transport that child to school? How much will it cost you with all the VAT on goods and things to feed that child, to clothe that child? It becomes a burden, and nobody seems to be thinking that the route every country is going is for free education, because education gives you the manpower. It gives you the human resource in this country. And now you are, you know, you are burdening people. Yeah. So it's not really looking, in terms of education and maybe many other sectors, I don't think I'm very, very optimistic, but I'm optimistic as a person in terms of, I always see a greater, maybe a greater God who sees what finally will happen.
And if you mentioned about the kind of burden on the parents currently. And we've come from a very tough year. 2023 was a very tough year with a higher taxation, reduced household incomes. Now we're looking at the burden of, if at all the government is unable to fully fund education, matters to do with free free education, free primary, free secondary education. It means we're still going back to the same parents to fund this. These same parents are still struggling with trying to understand the new funding model for universities.
Correct.
Very poor parents will still have to contribute something, because I think even the poorest will still have to pay at least 5% as their contribution towards the tuition fees for universities. And as you mentioned, education was a game changer. It was an equalizer in society that could enable those from a poor background to actually be at the same level with those from well-off backgrounds.
Correct.
But has that changed? Do you feel like education now is no longer the equalizer that it used to be?
Yeah, I think something drastic is going to happen, because I think education is going to remain now something that is affordable only for certain people, because you see the funding model. I believe even some courses now will be out of the hands of some of the very poor parents, because if you can't pay the fees, then the resources required even for certain courses, we know, the equipment, the tools, the materials that they require, then the parents won't be able to pay. So you'll find parents maybe asking their children, don't choose this course because I can't afford. Maybe I can afford the fees, but I can't afford whatever else follows. So I think many countries, you know, when I look around the world, I look at countries, and now the issues they are dealing with are issues of equity, because they have made it, you know, easy to access education for everyone. But now they are looking at equity. What are the issues that are causing us not to? What is keeping down the boys or the girls? What is keeping, is it the feeding or whatever? But in this country, it's not those issues of equity. Now we are creating inequities. And it's going to be very sad. I'm sure it's going to affect the courses the children chose, the subjects they choose, and yet we know these children are gifted differently, and some of them are geniuses in certain areas, and instead of being helped, you're going to squeeze that out of them. You're going to squeeze out certain courses they like because their parents can't afford.
I'll ask you to make an assessment of this administration's handling of the education sector, given the fact that you've been in the system for quite a while.
Yes.
You've seen successive administrations and how they've handled the issue of education. And during President Moi's time, there was a preference or a push for the girl child to actually enjoy more school time. When President Kibaki came in, his priority was free primary education, which he implemented. When the Jubilee administration came in with Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, there was also a focus on free primary education, free laptops. There appeared to always be a promise on matters of education. When it comes to this Kenya Kwanza administration, do you feel that there is a promise? Do you feel that there is any focus or attention being given to education matters?
No, I don't think I think education is not their focus. They are focusing on other things. I think we have heard over the media, it's about housing. I don't know when we'll access this housing and who will access it and which year. And you see, education has been ignored. And that's why you can see now even what is happening to education in terms of curriculum. We are messing it up. We are squeezing because we have squeezed resources. So we are also squeezing the curriculum instead of expanding it, because we already, as educationists, we know that, and I think as one of the architects of CBC, I want to say, we would drew CBC on the focus that we should nurture every learner. And we already now, as educationists, know that children have different intellect. You know, it's not just about academics. We have intellect in terms of what they can do with their hands, with their feet, and we are broadening that curriculum so that we could capture all these children. And you know, it's for the government to assist children to find out who they are, not to be squeezed into a box to go and do whatever some people think they should be doing. It should be that they stay in school, they have a curriculum broad enough to explore to see maybe I like music, I like fine art, I don't like these other things about engineering and mathematics. And we need, if you look at the world and you look at some of the really geniuses, some of them were not just in sciences. People like, is it Michelangelo? You know, they were good in art. And we accepted. There are people who are good in music, and we accepted, you know, that they are geniuses in that. And today we read about them in their history, and we are happy. Why don't we want to do that for our children? Why are we squeezing them because we want to squeeze everything else?
Now that you say that in as far as handling of the education sector is not optimum with this administration, what kind of risk are we looking at as a nation? Because as we said, all other previous administrations have given at least some sense of focus on education matters, and we're not seeing that kind of attention this time round. What kind of risk are we looking at if at all we do not pay attention to education?
You see, a lot of iniquities in many areas, because I look at the previous governments. They looked at ways of improving. One, I think the earlier governments looked at quantity that all children should be able to access. And then the subsequent governments were looking at now a bit of equity, you know, equality, the quality of education more than the numbers. But you see now we've dipped this, so we are going to create a lot of iniquities in terms of the poor being unable to access education, first of all. Also being unable to access certain courses that maybe their children are even gifted in. Iniquities even in the institutions where they're accessing this education. Because, you know, with CBC we're trying to do away with schools that are so special. I think in our primaries we went to some very funny schools, and yet we made it, so long as the focus, the teachers were well prepared. We are also not, you know, the teachers now have to worry about their salaries, the taxation. So do you think they'll pay more attention to identifying potentials in children, or do you think they will look at what has been done to my salary? I recall somebody telling me, you know, now even affording transport to even go to work as a teacher is an issue, because I'm living here and where I'm teaching is 100 kilometers from where I am. So that kind of transport, you know. So we're going to create a lot of iniquities, and I'm very, very sad, because it's our children that are going to suffer. It's the country that's going to suffer because they will not get the manpower that they require. I think we should go back to the drawing board.
Allow me to invite now Peter Munga, education researcher, to this conversation. Bwana Munga, Happy New Year, karibu sana.
Happy New Year to you.
And looking at, you see the optimism that comes with the new year, but when it comes to matters education and looking at the dailies this morning, there's a little to smile about. And if at all you see a common headline across the dailies, then you know it is a big problem for the country. Cash crunch as schools reopen, trouble in education. These are the kind of headlines we are looking at on a week when we're going back to school. Students, learners are going back to school. JSS teachers have said they are not going back. They're on strike. We do expect KCSE results as early as this morning. There are questions with that. There's already anxiety, especially given the kind of debacle we saw with the KCPE exam results. And we're just generally looking at how education is being handled, generally by the administration, even generally as a country, how we are handling matters education. And I'm asking, are you worried that we could be mishandling education as a nation?
Yes, I like what the director or former director has just been saying. You know, when the fish comes out of the water and tells you that the crocodile is sick, then the crocodile is sick, because madam, as she speaks, she has been in the kitchen, where education is actually cooked in this country. And as she puts it correctly, there is a problem. There is no way that Kenyans, and the headlines as you put it, could be the way they are if there's no problem. Let me start by saying that the problem that we have in Kenya right now is that we politicized our education system. We left out education specialists like Madam Umam I'm grateful to sit with this morning. We left out people who trained in education. So at the end of the day, we had every person, everybody trying to give their suggestion on how education should be done. And that is where we went wrong as a country, that we decided that education can be done by anyone. Truth, starting from the time we got independent, even before independence, the missionaries who came into this country and began kind of the education that we have today, they had some kind of direction that they had. The direction mainly was to do with, they wanted to teach the 3 R's, the writing, the arithmetic, and the reading, the 3 R's. That was their main calling kind of that time. But you see, as we've gone along, we've gotten mixed up with everything. We've made education in this country to be like the jack of all trades, that we want to produce a farmer, we want to produce a doctor, we want to produce anybody, an entertainer. So all these people are being cooked in one pot. And what is coming out, or the aroma, is what we are seeing the headlines this morning, that we are not able to afford it. The CBC, a great curriculum that should be accepted. Problem is, have we put enough finances in it? Teachers are there. Have we trained the teachers? Have we equipped the schools? Have we put there enough resources? And that is where the problem really comes. And maybe in my opening remarks, I'll just finish by saying, when you see a situation whereby you say education in this country is funded, then you discover parliamentarians are also talking about CDF and saying that we will give bursaries to schools. Then you hear about parents also paying school fees and all these kind of things. The education in this country has become too expensive to be managed by we Kenyans. Actually, the issue right now is not even just the curriculum. It is the expense, what word should I use? It is the cost of education, that's the word. The cost of education in this country has become too high, too impossible. You've read, and I think you must have, we are taking Form 1s very soon to school this coming week. After this week, the next week, Form 1s report to schools. You must have seen over this weekend, there have been reports of how principals of schools are now cashing in. Because of the confusion that was there in placing Form 1s in schools. So parents are lining up in the so-called big schools. And what is happening is that bribing, corruption, a letter is now going to as much as 200,000 to get a letter for Form 1 admission in one of some of the best schools in this country.
There have been many interventions that were aimed at sanitizing, ensuring there is some sanity in the education sector to get rid of corruption, exam cheating and all these issues. Yet we are not seeing these vices dying down. Exam cheating is still a big problem. And now admission to Form 1 is still a big problem. And one wonders, what happened to all these interventions? Because, yes, as we say, on one hand, this administration does not look like they have a lot of focus on education. Yet, it is probably one of those administrations that has had a lot of knee-jerk interventions in as far as education is concerned. We are looking at, for example, the grading system. For KCPE or joining university that we're going to see once the results are released today. We're looking at a new university funding model. All these issues, we're looking at a new curriculum that was to change all these things. All these interventions, some may not really be credited to them, but all these interventions were aimed at getting rid of these vices. How come none is working?
I think because they were just ignored. I remember when we came up with CBC, one of the things we wanted to knock down were exams, because they become very, very competitive. And when something becomes very competitive, of course, you know, there are those who want the shorter route, so there will be corruption, there will be people buying grades. So we had thought with CBC would do away with the exams. We retain what is called assessment to tell us, this child is good in this subject and this subject or in this area, and not necessarily that they competed with the next one and he became position 1 and he became position 2. That is, I think those positions are nonsensical in terms of education. What you want to find out is, with this curriculum, where can I place a child? who is that child who loves art and can continue doing art. So with CBC, and I think during my working years, in fact, one of the biggest battles was with politicians, because they kept telling us, no, we want to know how my child will move from this school, Sijui Kanyanyaine. I remember hearing that school all the time, Kanyanyaine to Alliance. And the idea of CBC was even to get rid of those alliances and mangus and whatever, and create centers of excellence, so that schools can be built. If, for example, somebody can be able to fund a very good science school, children can go there. If somebody else is able to put their resources into arts, and those are now the pathways we were creating in senior schools. And so by the time a child is in grade 9, they're able to tell, yes, I think I've played with this curriculum. The teacher already knows that at grade 9, this child can go to this pathway and can explore even, and those pathways were even broad enough for them not to be squeezed into one career. But you see now, all that was ignored, because I think when you now politicize even education, I think that's the sickening thing that's happening. And you have to deal with appointments, people appointed instead of people who've grown in that sector. Even when it comes to health ministry, you want a doctor who's been able to do certain surgeries quite well, who has experience. You remember, like Dr. Bernard, the one who was doing heart surgeries. And we want to know doctors who can do this so that we can focus the patients to the right doctor, isn't it? Yeah. But you see now, we've ignored education, we've ignored the teachers. Are we motivating them now? Do you think they will be motivated even to explore that curriculum and be even innovative within it, or they'll now want to survive?
Hold that thought, because that is exactly what we'll be talking about after the break. The JSS Crisis. This is supposed to be the bridge between primary school and high school. And these issues about pathways are supposed to be canvassed during the 3 years of junior secondary school. But that is where we are seeing a crisis. And are we really making any progress in as far as the junior secondary school is concerned? That after the break. You're watching Morning Cafe. Still discussing matters back to school with Olive Mbuthia, former Deputy Director KICD and Education Consultant, as well as education researcher Peter Amunga, who works for KEWOTA, that's the Kenya Women Teachers Association. And I now want us to take a look at JSS, a junior secondary school. And it has been one of the biggest problems in as far as the implementation of the new curriculum is concerned. As we stand right now, over 20,000 intern teachers who were posted at the beginning of 2022 to schools countrywide to teach in JSS schools have said they're not going back to school because they have issues to do with their contracts, issues to do with their salaries, and issues like that. They're also complaining about the handling of the curriculum. They're saying that some subjects are being bundled together, which burdens the teacher even further. But looking at JSS, which is supposed to be the bridge between primary school and high school, this was initially intended to be where the learners will be able to identify their pathways. But as it is right now, we're looking at the first group of the CBC learners in grade 8. Issues to do with the curriculum had not even 100% been resolved as they were in grade 7. They only have 2 more years to join high school. Issues of pathways are not being discussed. The kind of crisis we're seeing, are we sure that we're doing the right thing, Bonamunga? Are we sure that the way we approached CBC and JSS is the best way?
Yes. I like the way you've put it that, actually it's been now this is going to be the 8th year since we began CBC in terms of when we began in primary school, grade 1. So this year we're having for going to grade 8. We have others supposed to be getting into grade 7. Now, we were experimenting. I was working with the Kenya National Union of Teachers, and we did a research on when the CBC really was being implemented, started. Wilson Sosion set up a kind of a group to research on do we have what it takes to do CBC. And we went round the schools because CBC by that time was, I think, in grade 3, grade 4. And we went round this country looking around our schools, our equipments, our resources. And we came up with a negative report card and we said, we are not ready. We went to the minister that time of education, that was Madam Amina Mohammed. She was the CS, that time Minister for Education. And together, herself, we met at the KICD. And when we were at KICD, she announced, that time the current Vice Chancellor of DStv, his name is Airo, was actually the person in charge of implementation. And she announced before, on the steps of KICD, that of truth, we are not yet ready with the CBC. We want to give it more time before we really launch it officially. Actually, that statement alone was enough for her to leave that ministry. A few days after that, she was removed from the Ministry of Education. And so the problem I'm trying to say is not, we as education specialists are not listened to. When we gave our report at KICD, on the steps of KICD, with Professor Airo, with all the experts in the KICD and across the country and the unions, we were not listened to. We were told that CBC will work. Mpende, musipende. That's a political statement. We were told the train left the station. Tutakutana nayo mbele. We told them the train has left the station without the driver. They told us, don't worry, the driver, are we the teachers? They told us, don't worry, the train has already left. What
is the biggest concern? Because you were part of those who modeled this curriculum.
Yes.
And the issue of pathways is probably key to avoid over-concentration on exams.
Yes.
That learners should be able to identify the pathways they will pursue in high school. But with only 2 years, barely 2 years, to that actually happening, to the first batch going to high school, and the way this curriculum is being handled, do you think we'll achieve that, at least with the first batch of learners, that they will be able to identify their pathways by the time they join high school?
I think there will be a lot of wastage of children. Of course, a few lucky ones, because there's some children who don't need us to, they know who they are, they know what they are good at. Their parents who are very good at following up their children. Their teachers, I would say there are some teachers who also like to work. So some percentage will be able to sail through. Not easily, of course, it's the hard way. They will survive the hard way. But a majority, it's a waste. Junior school has been just something they have gone through. Nobody knew what was supposed to happen in junior schools, except maybe for a teacher to go to class and study in front there. The teachers who are handling JSS had so many issues that unless you deal with those issues, then it's like a person. If sometimes somebody has a mental problem and you don't go back and help the person even analyze what the problem is and look at what are the predisposing factors, then you're not going to get anywhere in terms of treatment. So even with with our teachers, good as they are, and they have to face a lot of challenges, nobody is even focusing on what they should do, telling them this is what. I remember, sorry to keep saying, the previous government had really tried. They put measures in place. They put a whole department. Of course, some people question why a new department, but I think it was good to have a new department focusing on the implementation, to deal with the implementation issue. The curriculum was well done, but of course, the implementation is another story. KICD does not implement. So somebody else has to sit and say, okay, this is good enough, but how do we get this done, okay? And the idea is to nurture the...
We had the Presidential Working Party. That ideally was supposed to resolve some of the implementation issues.
And out of it came out a department that looked at it. I remember I worked with them, and there were even transition committees to look at the issues that will arise in the transition. TSC was on board on what they should do with the teachers. I remember even drawing programs for TSC on the training of teachers, and they were willing, and so long as they got funding, I'm sure they would do. The thing is, when it comes to in-service teachers, the ones in service, you can, after all, most of us have left jobs. But when we go, we take up a job, there is some training that goes on, and we become better at it. There are skills that are given even when you're still working, and the same should happen to teachers. They are skilled even as they are doing. And I think that was well done. But of course, when this new administration, that was forgotten, the department was dismantled. So anything that would have helped with JSSS, collapsed.
Yes. But even when it comes to teachers, there's a big question, because they are the real implementers of that curriculum. But we're seeing that even the teachers themselves complaining about their own issues. Plus, there's also the confusion on where exactly the JSS should be domiciled.
Yes.
Is it primary school? Is it high school? And that debate alone is a contributing factor to some of the problems we're seeing.
That is true. And that's why you brought, I just want to weigh in on the issue of the pathways as I come on to that one. That, when you talk about the teachers were supposed to, I said it on this show one time, the CBC curriculum is like coaching a child to find his way. It's like a football game. I gave it an example here, whereby there's a child who can play number 6, another one can play goalkeeper, defense, an attacker. So you as the coach, teachers were supposed to be the coaches. They're no longer to be teachers. Actually, KICD called us facilitators. That was the word that was to be used on teachers. So we, as facilitators in CBC curriculum, we were to be like the coaches. So our work as a facilitator was to look at now, where is this child fit? Where can this child play? Can this child play as a defense? Can this child play as an attacker? Can this person be in the midfield? So we as coach were only to advise. That's what we call the pathways. Now, the problem is we were not equipped, and that's what we are putting it here. We as teachers reached a place and discovered we were not equipped to be good coaches. We are still using what we used to call lecture method, which you and I may have gone through when you are in college or in the university or school. A teacher comes to your class with a piece of chalk on the board and lectures you for 30, 40 minutes and goes away. That is not CBC. CBC is I sit behind there like a coach. I let you go in front and play as I identify your talent and your pathway. Now, we as a country, or we as in the education sector, we failed to get that. That's why 1 year down the line after our children got into junior secondary school, JSS, right now you can ask any child who has been in any of our schools, do you really know what your pathway is right now? They'll tell you, I don't know, I'm still confused. You see, that is now where we know we have gotten it wrong. If we had gotten it right, by the end of this year, we as teachers have something we call objectives. At the end of my lesson, at the end of the year, those are the things that we normally go with.
There was some training for teachers who are to teach in JSS. What happened to that?
In fact, the trainings, you see, I like what she has put it. There was an implementation committee in the previous government. That's what I'm telling you about the issue about politics. It was a whole department. Actually, I think there was what we call CAS in charge of just implementation of CBC curriculum. So it was a whole sector. So when the new government came in, they came in now and brought something called the Presidential Working Party, which almost again dismantled everything that had been done before. And then now they said, let's domicile JSS in primary schools. The previous government had wanted it put domicile in secondary schools for these 3 reasons. One, they believed the teachers who are able now to handle that level were to be teachers found in secondary school, so that they can be able to teach them the pathways. Now, the teachers you are talking about in JSS are not the ones who were trained by KICD that time. These ones were employed, if you normally hear something talked about, 56,000 teachers who are employed, and we call them interns right now. And they were sent to schools. They were just employed from the field.
They're the ones complaining that...
They are the ones who want to go on strike. Because they are saying, you took us those schools, you didn't give us books, you didn't train us, you didn't do anything. And you put us in a situation, domiciled us in a primary school. We trained to be secondary school teachers. And where you put us, we don't know how to operate because we don't have the facilities of a high school that we were trained to teach this kind of children. So their strike is not just about their salary. If you listen to their complaints when they are talking, they say many times that we are not doing anything in those schools. You can't bring a high school teacher, like personally I'm a high school teacher. I was trained 2 subjects, that is English and literature, 2 subjects only. Then I put some drama in it, but just two subjects. Now, if you take me to teach mathematics, history, geography, chem, biology, I want to tell you I'll be doing almost 0 work. So it will mean I am also reading something here and going to the... So what these GSS guys are telling us, who we are in the field, they come and tell us, we go to those classes and tell the child, copy everything on page 94 to page 200. Just copy. He doesn't have he was not trained for that subject, so he just tells them to copy. So the pathways that you are talking about, we are not achieving them because those teachers are not equipped.
So you feel that JSS should be domiciled in high schools?
To me, I would have wanted JSS to be either domiciled in high school or to stand alone. You know what I mean by stand alone? Because it's all 2 years, it's 3 years. JSS is the biggest shaper of this curriculum. It carries the heaviest load.
What is your feeling?
Yes, I actually wanted to support him because when you are drawing CBC, why we set up a junior school is because we realize these children are a certain age. They have most of them are becoming adolescents. They have issues. I think you all know issues of adolescence. And we found, and I think if you looked back at the older system where we were going to grade 7 and grade 8, you find some children who are growing up and not fitting in the primary schools. Because, you see some are having their menstruations, others are their voice breaks, and then the younger ones are laughing at them. So we created junior schools so that the teachers would be able to handle that cohort in terms of how their bodies are growing, how they want to be treated. Of course, it's around adolescence that they realize now, I am me and this is the way I want. And I think that department, which now was scrapped, I think knew about these challenges and they would be handling them. So they would have handled them when they got to grade 6, seen the issues that were arising. Of course, you learn as things are implemented. But now who is doing that? It's just there for us to see the mess that is happening. So the domiciling, actually this is a cohort. And like he says, for us in curriculum, we didn't care. So long as it's an entity on its own, with its own administration, with its own kind of, teachers, whether they are teachers from primary upgraded during, with some training, or high school teachers, and they have been facilitated to do it better, because just being a teacher is not enough. You have to be able to handle this cohort. Because if you don't understand them, you're going to still have issues. You remember the issues of children burning schools and things. Those are issues that are, about their mental well-being and things. So I think it was an entity. That's why it was isolated as junior school. Okay? And it should be an entity on itself, whether domiciled here or there, but it's an entity that runs on its own. The teachers who are in junior school are well prepared for it, know what kind of children they are. Can handle the subjects, and I think TSC has that capacity, even neighbored, because some of this, it looks like a broad curriculum, but it's not broad. It is same subjects broken down so that you can get the finer things. Like if you look at mathematics, there's geometry, there's algebra. Now you've broken mathematics so that not all children who are good in geometry are good in algebra. So that's the thing, so that they play around with these subjects. But you see now, you are lumping them now back together.
What do you say about the latest move to adjust some of the subjects, to bundle like a business education together with computer studies into one lesson being taught by one teacher? Because that is a part of the reasons why GSS teachers are saying this one is not working. That kind of move, is it a move you support?
No, I don't. Not at all. Because there was a good reasoning, and I think what we needed to do was to implement this. And since we are saying this now is not a competitive curriculum, it's about nurturing, then you find out if there's a problem with a certain subject, then what do you need to do? But you lump together things even that are not working together. There are people who are computer literate and they don't care about business. Okay, why are you training them on business? There's somebody who is purely wanting to do into business, and they can. So I think we should have seen, people are, when people look at a curriculum, they say it's broad in terms of subject. Yet the timetable is the same. We learn from Monday to Friday, and it is timetabled. All we have done is, for example, instead of your mathematics being timetabled as one subject, it is now timetabled as algebra and, but within the same timetable, same hours. So there's nothing about, it's about resources.
The argument would be that probably we are a bit too ambitious when we came up with so many subjects for CBC, and that it is resource intensive. The kind of funding it would require, even the government that is already struggling would not be able to meet that kind of funding. Is it the challenge we're facing now that probably CBC was too expensive for us, that with our kind of resources, we should have been a bit more modest?
That is why she puts it very clearly. You see, when there was interference and now trying to take to domicile this side, you see, even in high school, you remember when you reached Form 2, you are told now, choose between CRE and history, or geography and history, or business, commerce for that matter, and say computer lessons. Now, this is what was supposed to happen when they reached junior secondary. They were not supposed to be taught all those subjects. They were supposed to reach a place, and now they get what you are calling the pathway. You choose now your direction. The child or the teacher now says, this child can do very well in agriculture. So you pathway that child towards agriculture. These are the one towards computer science. These are the one towards games and entertainment and sports. So now what happened is this. When we discovered we don't have teachers enough who can just say, for example, teach, say, drama, and this one can teach music. So now we are doing it like this. We are lumping all these people together and saying, okay, let's now just learn. Let's learn everything. So when we have discovered that we can't actually teach everything, that's why now they are trying. Actually, they have not really reduced the number of subjects. They have combined them. Like you see, I was reading in the new subjects. For example, home science has now been combined with agriculture. Now, you see, even when you look at it, it doesn't even seem to make sense. Yeah, because whoever was designing, these things had something called, they were developing something called curriculum designs. It is like just building a house. So what our KICD were doing for us in curriculum implementation, they'll draw a design. They'll say, this is how it will go, this is how it will look like, and at the end of the day, this is how the building will come out looking like. So what we have done, we are poking holes in what they did. So we as a government, a new government comes in and you say, I don't think they are right. Let's get at these other people now tell us what we need to do. And these other people also come up with another thing. So we have a whole mixture. Now, the argument is about resources, you put it. When we began this thing, we warned everybody in this country. CBC is an expensive curriculum. If we are going for it, we must be able to afford it. You don't build, even the Bible says, no man buildeth a tower, King James, before he sitteth down and counteth the costs. So you don't want to build a tower like CBC before you sit down first. And that's what now our KICD people had done. They sat down, they costed this thing. They said it will cost this much. Everyone said it's fine, we can do it. Let's go ahead. So now if we reach a place in the middle and start saying we are not able, then we do what we call education wastage. You waste the years of those people, you waste everything that has been done, you water down the whole curriculum. It's a mess.
Wow.
Let me ask, you see, like, for example, in the Ministry of Health, things crop up even as we move. You know, we have a budget for the Ministry of Health, but at one time there is COVID, another time there is TB, another side. You see, what the government does is look for resources to be able to handle what comes. Okay, when it comes to junior school, whether, I mean, if it's requiring more resources, why don't you give those resources, you know, at junior school so that you are able to nurture the right learners, so that at university, you know, they'll have skills that they'll take up to the universities. You know what is happening mostly in universities? The first 2 years are wasted on redoing certain subjects.
Yes.
Those are resources being used. You find that, like, for example, I'm a home economics teacher. When I went to university, okay, my background was science. It was found out that you wouldn't be able to do home economics without science. Yes. So in the first 2 years,
you have to do some science.
We wasted time. For me, it was a waste of time because I started doing science subjects that I had already done in my A level because the others have to do and catch up with me. So 2 years and resources wasted. So why don't we look for these resources? Make sure that junior, in fact, I would pull a lot of resources for junior so that we find out what these children are and they are going to the right pathways and we are putting those resources in the pathways. And so when they go to the university, our work is so easy. They have all the skills, basic skills. We are not redoing it again.
But looking at this government, and clearly it is struggling. And as you say, this is resource intensive. You're seeing part of the crisis, head teachers are complaining that even the capitation for schools, this money is yet, even the money that was released last week, the 31 billion shillings, is yet to hit the accounts. 31 billion is a very small percentage of the money that schools expect. If at all you're looking at a very costly system, that would require more resources from the government, a government that clearly has no money. Aren't we missing the point?
Okay, we are taxing people for housing. Why can't we tax people so that education is free? Very good. I'm sure all the parents would love that. That if my taxes, if I'm getting taxes gotten from my salary, it's so that my child in junior school won't pay so much. Okay. Wouldn't I be happier?
In fact,
so I think it's priorities.
Yes. You got it.
It's priorities because if you tax me so that you give me, you make sure my child doesn't pay school fees, then I'll say, well and good. Okay. You're just removing the school fees.
At a time when we're talking about 100% transition from primary to secondary school, is because we still have that 844 final classes to go. And we're seeing the capitation, now even away from CBC, we're seeing the capitation for each student coming down as teachers are demanding that the capitation for each student increases from 22,000 to 30,000. Now we're seeing it coming down to 16,000. That in effect will affect the whole concept of free secondary education. Clearly the government is struggling. Let's give it to them. They are struggling.
Now, that's why I said some time again here, the problem with our education system is not just the government. When you talk about the government is struggling, we have international donors and funders. Actually, let me put it this way. This curriculum is not just ours. We have people somewhere seated somewhere in some of these Western capitals controlling this kind of thing. They are telling this government, and it may not come out in media openly. You may not see headlines about this. But when you see our president visiting different capitals in this world, he's not just going there to have coffee. They're not just going there to talk about some loan. They're also talking about issues like this education system. And he is being told by those people who are donating to us, this is the direction we want. You do this first, then we shall give you this money. If you don't do this, we will not release this money. So I believe whatever is happening, and I think I was seated here with Madam Director sometime, and she confirmed that even when she was working at KICD one time, she fell into problems because she discovered it's some international people actually who are behind some of the things that they are doing. So it's not just ours. Don't ever, and let Kenyans and our listeners, or people who are listening to us know this. This curriculum is not just ours. No.
Are you saying there's some ready funding?
There is funding. And I believe this government, where they are seated, they know funding may be coming, but they have been told, do this first, start off this way first, then the money will be released maybe sometime in future. So what I believe is, it's not the resources that is the problem. It is maybe that the priorities and the delays. Yes, the priorities are getting the problem, they are mixing them up. So as they mix them up, even whoever is supposed to be releasing this funding is delaying, is what can I use? Is not releasing on time. So we must accept and appreciate this fact that our education system is not just ours as Kenyans. We have very many international people, we have donors, we have the IMF, we have World Bank, we have different capitals. We normally hear something like the French Cultural Center coming in. You hear something like the German, I don't know, GOtv or whatever the word they use. Those people are not just talking to us about they fund this education.
But the reality as it is right now is that schools are struggling.
Yeah.
Schools are struggling with that kind of funding. Yeah.
I agree with my brother. You see, whatever you prioritize, that's what you get. If you prioritize education, you'll get people supporting you in education. And I know there are a lot of people doing things even in schools. But some of them, they are doing their own things and their own experiments with a lot of funding. But you see, if you don't prioritize education, then nobody is even going to give you that funding. They'll give you funding for whatever you prioritize. I think it's not the resources, it's priorities. If they find that we are prioritizing education, we'll attract funding. We don't nowadays call them donors, we call them development partners.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. If we'll attract them, they'll, some of them have goodwill to support whatever. So they'll support whatever you prioritize.
Okay.
Yes.
And Akelo Misori, Secretary General KUPPET, is just joining us. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
You found us right in the middle discussing the crisis in JSS. And listening to you and following you in the news media, you've been one of those who've insisted that the junior secondary school should be domiciled in secondary school, in high schools. And the debate on whether or not that is the biggest problem with the JSS, we're seeing a lot of crisis even in the understanding of the curriculum. Even the teachers who are supposed to be facilitating this special cohort are still complaining about their facilitation, the resources available in where the schools are domiciled currently. And we're wondering, is that the biggest problem where JSS is currently domiciled? Is it the biggest problem in as far as implementing CBC?
I may not say that it is the biggest problem, but it is one of the major challenges facing the implementation of CBC curriculum, especially at transition. The transition was messed up by the fact that the powers that be decided to listen to opinion than expert advice. And in the circumstance, they decided to take these learners to primary schools. There were no teachers prepared for JSS grade 7 in primary schools in the first instance, because secondary school teachers had been taken through to receive them. Classrooms had been built in the high schools to receive them. And then the debate around the age of the learners came on board, and the cost of that curriculum in secondary schools. So we listened to opinion than expert advice. So that we mess it up. But now let us come to the real issues which are now surrounding that. That environment is hostile because nobody cared to address the issues of relationships. Because they gave the JSS grade 7 trousers and class 8 had short captulas. That one alone. Then they posted JSS teachers. Not teachers, but JSS teachers. Some of them were promoted from primary school and they were given new titles that you are a JSS teacher. And then at the implementation, majority of those teachers who were taken there were just interns. Majority of the teachers. Even currently, majority of them are interns. How at transition and with a major curriculum shift do you take people who do not have experience to do this? And then they employed 40,000 to address this issue. They feel they are a separate lot. And in fact, even from the union point of view, they have become a real challenge to us because you realize they organize even demonstrations when they are still interns.
They're not unionizable.
Yeah, they are not unionizable. Then they are there. So these are the challenges which are there. So we look at it from the perspective that poor resources, lack of preparedness, and lack of focus from the policy direction has made that implementation nearly impossible at that level.
I'll ask you, do you think this government is mishandling education?
They have mishandled it. Not just the government they're mishandling it. Yeah. And from every quarter. Because even the Teacher Service Commission ought to have rationalized posting of teachers when they were told that these JSS are going to be domiciled. They posted 2 CRE teachers to handle 14 learning areas. How? How can somebody whose orientation is basically to teach CRE and Kiswahili, to teach physics, or we call it integrated science?
Now that you already have learners joining grade 8, this is actually smack right in the middle of JSS. The past 1 year or so could be said to have been wasted, as the other panelists agreed. Do you think there's a way of changing this course to ensure that JSS is actually beneficial to this particular cohort? Because they look like they could be wasting their time at JSS. Is there a way that can be turned around?
I thought somebody at Jogo could have thought otherwise. That let us transform the transition at grade 8. But they have not done it. Already there's the crisis that they have renewed the contract for intern teachers. And the intern teachers are saying, we are not taking up this job.
So they're not teachers, basically?
In fact, apparently they are not teachers. So for grade 8. Because already grade 7 lapsed without proper attention, and nobody cared. So their focus now is to disperse capitation to schools, and they're saying, oh, all is good. I think this is what in the Bible we find Prophet Jeremiah telling the king that things are not good, but the false prophets were telling him that everything is okay. Until the Babylonians came and swept them away.
I'm looking for a sense of hope somewhere, that something can happen. Because if we mess up or if we mishandle an entire education system, it means that a whole generation will be affected.
You see, the sense of hope is when you listen to expert voices. If only, and you see, I'm very humbled to be here with my brother Akello. Just Akello, this Christmas or this December, he held his AGM. And in his resolutions and, what he agreed the teachers were with him in that AGM of his union was about shaping the JSS. It was about this transition. This advice is expert advice. And when he was speaking, some of the best, the cream of this government was there. The prime CS was seated there. So you see, these are the people we are telling, as experts, do this and you'll get it right. Do follow this road, and everything will be fine.
Is it time we have a national conversation about our education system?
Yes.
And they say, let's hold everything and relook at which direction we're going?
I totally agree. And I think it's not hopeless if there is a will. You know, where there's a will, there's a way. If people are, like he's saying, willing to listen, willing to see where we made this mistake, what we can do, leave the experts, like they are saying, to do the work as the experts, then I think we can salvage something. But of course, what we see is not, there's no will. I don't think there's a focus. There's no, I think the interests are elsewhere. I think we've even started 2027. I don't think even the people in the ministries will want to be talking about education.
And remember that we're still expecting that the KCSE results for 2023 could be released. We are certain they're being released this week, but there's a high possibility that that could be this morning. We'll be telling you that in a short while. But even before that, looking at the headlines today, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the dailies. It's just purely matters education. Cash crunch as schools reopen and trouble in education. The issue of funding is key, especially for free secondary education. The capitation for each learner. Secondary schools have been agitating for an increase in capitation per learner to go up from 22,000 per student to 30,000. We are seeing that the government is working with a figure of 16 or 17,000 roughly, and appearing before Parliament, both the CS and the PS, Belio Kipsang, said that there is a serious issue of funding. But we're just looking at how this will affect secondary education, in particular free secondary education, because we are hoping to have a 100% transition. What is your assessment of this? If at all the government will not be able to cover the full capitation, as it were, what will happen to free secondary education?
When I joined, there was a debate about priority. If we don't, I had my colleagues talking about priority. If we don't prioritize education, then we just have to forget about quality. We just forget about 100% transition. There are two major things which have happened in the last 4 years. That the Kenya government decided to say that we are having 100% transition from primary to secondary schools, which was a very bold idea. And somebody ought to have known that this one was coming with responsibility, that you must fund it. And I have started a debate which you have also said that we need a national debate. There is no reason for government to keep quiet about there are challenges. We know there are challenges because everybody is struggling in this country. Sometimes even salaries delay because of lack of money to pay. Why can't parents be told that we are going the cost-sharing way? So that from the word go, the day secondary schools do not charge, or they charge directly because it is a directive from government that you must fund lunch, you must fund, also pay for the staff. Currently, as it obtains, the schools are not enabled, like even capitation 16,000. What is 16,000? This one, already it was 22,000 for secondary schools, but that is a reduction of about 7,000 shillings on this capitation. It cannot add up. The situation is so complex.
You saying you're going back on
even in your station here, I know there are so many students who are appealing for help. Yesterday I was shuttling through the TV stations that there were so many students who are stranded. They got 401 marks and they cannot go to school.
Are you saying we need to rethink this issue of free secondary education? That we
rethink, not even free secondary school, we rethink education, because even primary schools, they are the worst funded. How can you fund in 1 year 1,100 per student?
1,000.
Yeah. And that's not peanuts. In fact, that's why when you go to many schools where JSS are domiciled, you find that the facilities they are using are medieval facilities.
Okay.
But if at all we do that, aren't we overburdening the parents? That we've already seen in some schools, and the debate is always rife, that yes, the government may say this, it's free primary, free secondary, but the reality on the ground once you take your child to school is that you're already required to pay over and above what the government is saying.
Somebody said, Fred, education is expensive, but try ignorance. You know, ignorance is worse. It's expensive education. We can't run away from it. If you want quality education, quality tools, quality environment to have education prosper, then you must pay for it. There is a cost involved. That cost is what SG is saying here. That cost either therefore comes from the government, or we as parents must reach a place and realize that if the government cannot be able to afford quality education, not just education, quality education for our children, then we have to chip in. So it's going to become a concerted effort from we as parents, we as people who are education stakeholders, to ask very serious questions. And that's what he's saying, we need to rethink education. Ask serious questions like the ones you are asking us now. Is the funding we are receiving from government enough to offer quality education, tools, teachers, and the environment? If the answer is no, then the next question would be, so where do we get other funding?
Okay. What is your take on that? Before we come to issues KCSE as we wrap up the discussion.
Yes, I still think, according to what my brothers have said, is, we prioritize.
Okay.
And I think when you prioritize, sometimes you also attract. Even you in your own home, if you prioritize something, you find all the energies go there. And there are people of goodwill who can help you. So like he's saying, I think the funding thing is all the way from primary. Look at the facilities that are in primary school, some of them. And I think I had said earlier, if you tax us so that you can improve education, I think it would be an easier thing than taxing me for housing.
Okay.
And I think he's talking of cost sharing.
Cost sharing.
I think would be happier cost sharing.
Most parents right now are listening to this conversation are a bit worried because with all the taxation and they say now we cost share in education matters. Well, it is only January that has 67 days. Anyway, let's now focus on KCSE. One, there's a feeling that these results have really delayed. Yeah. There are concerns about the handling of national exams, given what happened with KCPE. Then there's the issue of grading, a new grading system that takes effect with this cohort. And that is what we're staring at as we await the KCSE results to be released either today or anytime this week. What is your concern?
I am not very keen on the delays, because so long as a good job is done in terms of giving us the correct results, and I don't think it is too late. When during our times, the examination results were not even coming as early as people expect, but the tradition has been that they are released immediately to avoid anxiety. But as at now, we expect that January, if it is released in January, there's no problem. The new grading system, which is going to be affected, I don't think was well thought of, because you cannot implement the rules of the game when the schedule for that game, for example, is on. The rules of the game must be developed before the game begins. Mm-hmm. So this is a case where the policymakers are drawing the field afresh when the game is on and the referees on the field. Mm. The teachers have prepared the candidates and they know this is what we are expecting. So I don't think it was a good idea. Mm-hmm. In fact, there are so many things which have happened. If I was here earlier, could have raised. The primary schools are being run as comprehensive schools without a policy framework developed by Parliament. This one also was just brought as as a way to massage the ego of certain people's feeling, those people are making policing. It has been very unfortunate.
What is necessary? Was it necessary?
Not necessary at all. Not necessary at all. Because already we are having candidates who are joining university and they are going to courses. These courses were already designed with the old tradition, and the universities were not involved in the new arrangement of NEC.
Yet,
so I don't think it was well thought of.
The rationale is that with this new grading system, more students will be able to join universities. Do you agree that the need to have more people able to join university because of the kind of variety of subjects that they take in high school probably overshadows the need to maintain the status quo?
My problem is, I mean, we are focusing on numbers and not quality. Mm-hmm. Because I think what we need to focus on is quality. Who are we getting there? Two, I think in this country we've started noticing that TVET institutions also play a role. There are people who also don't go directly to university, they go through TVET. So I don't think we need to create a path only for people to go to universities. There are some who will go to TVET and they can still find their way into universities. I think with my problem is education is so politicized. Even when it comes to exams, the politics, people want to force. I said I was in CBC. We had said in grade 6 there should not even be an exam, an external assessment. The teacher should be able to hand us a report saying this child is able to do this. Since we were also planning 100% transition. So you hand over a child to junior school who has certain marks, and the teacher should be able, not marks. You have an assessment that says this one is good in this, and you keep on nurturing that. But the politicians kept telling us, I remember this debate took us a long time because they still wanted us to put some grades so that some people can move from Kanyenyaini to Alliance. I still remember that statement, Kanyenyaini to Alliance. What is so important about Kanyenyaini to Alliance? Many of us are not products of Alliance. Mm-hmm. Some people have gone, in fact, there was a time we had PS in education. Is it Karega? Yes. Who did it non-formally. Mm. Everything he did was in the non-formal sector. So the thing is to open the space for children to go through their own way of, if they want to go through TVET to university. So for me, like he says, even coming up with a new grading system when already the rules of the game and everything, I think that was just a deviation. And
yes, we have a confirmation that the KCSE 2023 exam results will be released this morning from Eldoret at the Moi Girls High School, CS Machogu. We'll do that from there, and yes, just as well, the president is in Uasin Gishu County as well, and the results have to be presented to him first before the official release. So yes, for candidates of KCSE or those who sat the KCSE 2023 exam, today is D-Day. Exam results will be out in about 1 or 2 hours. So do stand by for that. And of course, TV47 will be here to bring you all the latest from that end. As we continue this conversation, do you feel that there's a lot of haphazard, knee-jerk implementation of very crucial or very consequential, if I may call it that, policies by this administration, the university funding, the grading system, and a possible relook at free secondary education? What do you think of that?
Even and by that I want to wish the candidates who sat 2023 exams all the best. We wish you well. But you see, even that, when you talk about knee-jerk, you see, SG is here right now. When you release exams, like the significant exam like the KCSE 2023, SG here is supposed to have already been informed. It needs to be already on the ground because he's a great stakeholder of that kind of activity. You cannot come up with an announcement like that we are confirming now that the results will be released today from that far, out of the capital. And the stakeholders, who many of them are here in Nairobi, have not even been invited or involved, or you want to invite them the last minute. That is not how we do things. In a developed world, things are organized, dates are set, deadlines are put. You know, this working in a schedule like that shows organization. When you do things like what now we are seeing, suddenly from nowhere, we are taking children to school this morning. We are opening, we have so much to do right now. And now you tell us you want to release exams.
Do you feel there's a lot of confusion?
That is already the mother of confusion. And you see, we don't even look far. We see it there, right there before us. I want to say this, and I like what SG had put it here. It's not even the delay. It's not even the hurry to release exams that is important. It is the quality. It is the organization. It is the filling in, the jigsaw puzzle that comes in, and everybody says, this is a great team working. You can be sure with this kind of thing again, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, you will invite me again to discuss issues that have arisen out of this result, because I'm sure there will be many. Now, you say, is it that we have knee-jerk reactions? I wanted to weigh in something about the comprehensive school. We hadn't talked about it, but somebody had mentioned, my brother had mentioned it here, that it was not part of our arrangement when we were talking about CBC and what curriculum will develop. Suddenly, a few people are sitting somewhere in parliament or somewhere taking coffee somewhere and decide, you know, for us to manage this education system, we want to come up with something called a comprehensive school. A comprehensive school, they are saying, ECD comes together, primary school and junior secondary, all of them now are heaped in one basket, and we call it one school, the comprehensive school. Now you've seen the Council of Governors have come out very strongly and said, look, what is that again? Because in our constitution as a country, ECD or early childhood education is devolved. Technical and vocation is devolved. So when somebody just comes out of from nowhere without involving the stakeholders and giving them, engaging them properly, you discover you even start doing things contrary to your own constitution.
These things are already in the law, yeah. The fact that ECD is a devolved service. How come? Because probably with all the confusion, one would think that probably it would be a result of a lack of legislation, proper legislation around the education system. But it would appear we have enough laws around education. What is the problem? Couldn't this therefore be challenged in court? The kind of decisions we are seeing the national government, because we're also looking at possible solutions here.
Yeah, Kenya has very good laws and regulations, but we are very good at ignoring them. And in fact, I think the trend now is to ignore. So even if you go to court, we will not still listen. So I think the laws are there, policies, and I think some of these things we should leave to the experts. I don't know why it is the politicians to look at this issue of even now we have to announce results. Do all countries have a day when they announce their results for schools?
Well,
I think these are the funds. Instead of having people take all their cars to that place where they will announce the results, why don't they look at those resources and see where they can fit them within the school system? Yes.
You don't think we should be announcing results?
Why? What for?
Ceremony?
Give the child the grade and they can go and celebrate with the parent and whatever. Well, it's good to celebrate success, but remember, we are now talking about mental health. What happens to those children who have failed? Are we saying they are useless? Are we saying we need that day so that to make them, that day there are some children who are going to suffer, really suffer mentally. Okay. And we are talking of now, the Ministry of Health is telling us about mental health. Because some will be celebrating, some will be, and others will be crying. I mean, the focus is get the results and let them do what they are supposed to do the placement and things like that.
But I'm sorry, you've been at the forefront of raising pertinent questions with regard to the education system and issues that arise. And one may wonder when it comes to issues of legislation around education and the issues that we are seeing, is there a loophole? Is there a gap in legislation? Do we need to go back and relook at the laws that, the framework under which our education is based, so that probably to ensure that we seal the loopholes?
Just to take you back from what Munga has said, that we are operating in silos. Like for example, now there is the hula baloo about release of KCSE and in Eldoret. and we are here in Nairobi, and we are discussing KCSE results. Which universities presented their results to the president before they release masters or PhD? I think that is more sensitive. I think more sensitive because the president should have a say on who has got a PhD in political science, because that is going to affect the politics of the day. But now it has been taken to Eldoret because the president must look at that result. My sister said we have over-politicized education to the extent that now it will be a real score to the person, to the minister, because he has not overshadowed the president with the result itself. I don't think we are correct in that perspective, but granted as it may be, we have knee-jerk policy issues in the Ministry of Education. Somebody who is bold enough should come and correct it. I don't think we are going to apologize on this. It is going to be very, very sensitive for us to continue watching that we have got people diverting their attention, that they want to run ECD, we call it early year education, in our primary schools. Yet, even in Nairobi where we are, there are standalone early year education centers which are established according to the law. And that is what should be followed. But it is not bad to have them in one house. But when you go to most schools, you realize that that is not compatible. Because even playground for the young ones is not there. And then there is even a ground, we are now talking about environmental issues. There are schools without even single grass growing because the population is too much in there. And nobody has cared to put even cabros. So health issues are raised in schools, nobody cares about it. It is now time for Kenya to think about quality, because our neighbors, for example, Rwanda, is already running away with quality education because they are positive thinkers. Yet it is Kenya which crafted the university education in Rwanda and even their curriculum. When they did not have. How do you craft for others and then yours is in shambles? We are now running on the heels of the implementation of CBC, which is supposed to be competency-based, and the teachers are not given the right orientation on this. And that's why there's all the question that, are we really prepared? Because you take teachers for orientation, and it is a public rally. Somebody's there reading notes which he or she does not understand to teachers who are supposed to implement this. So we have got real issues. But now, granted, we must sit and rethink education. Policymakers must adopt the issue of consulting experts. And experts must also be loud, because they have been given the power to read and do what pertains to their areas of specialization. So they should not allow pedestrians to run away with this.
Okay.
Yeah, we cannot allow these pedestrians to run away with messing up with education.
Okay. The other big thing happening this year is after the 4-month selection, of course, 4 months will be joining schools. There was a whole debacle around which schools are more desired than others and whatnot. And as we wrap up this discussion, probably you could make a comment on that as you make your final comments. You each get about 2.5 minutes.
Maybe you give me the first time, because I'm going to another place. It is going to be very, very difficult for Kenya to grapple with these issues of like what we are talking about. 2%, nearly 6% of Kenyans are going to national schools, only 6%. And the rest are coming from those schools which are not regarded as schools. But there is always a scramble that people must go to these 6% schools. And somebody somewhere is saying that is to foster national integration. How do you use only 6% for national integration, when the rest of 94% are learning in their own villages. It is long time we think day school, that people walk from home to school. Alliance should be able to admit just people to walk from the neighborhood and to go there and learn. So long as the curriculum is well crafted with national values, and then they will be there. Yeah. Anybody who lives around Alliance should just walk to Alliance because it is national, it is 100% transition. There should not be any condition.
Okay.
Yes.
Amunga,
yes,
final comments.
and my final comments, just to add on what he's saying. Form 1 selection now brings out the problem that we see again, inequality in education. When you look at how parents are struggling and fighting for those few chances in what they call the big schools, that already is an indicator that there is inequality in education in this country. Why struggle for these few schools? What makes us feel so attracted to those schools? What is it that those schools are offering that a Shivinga or Shamsinjiri or Humsalaba Secondary School don't have? See, the moment we reach a place as a country where, as he puts it, that you can walk to school and get quality education, any school, that's the day we'll talk about quality and equity in education. So far, with what's going on, and even with the results being released, because they will name some schools this morning. Those schools they'll name will become the most sought after schools next year and even this year, and corruption will involve. That's why you are reading today in social media. I happen to be a social media person. All through the social media platforms today and yesterday are complaints from parents that we are paying, we are bribing principals. Principals are my colleagues. But now you see that's the issue now, that they are being accused of corruption, that for you to get a chance at some of those big schools, you have to part with 200, 300,000 to get a letter. That's unfortunate.
Wow. Finally.
Yes. I still, for me, I still yearn for the day that children will be placed, not according to national schools or whatever category of schools, but they will be placed according to the skills they want to pursue, so that they can later pursue their careers. I think that's all. And my final comment is, let's prioritize. Let's focus on education. We look like we are going to create inequalities when we are trying to get out of those issues and make education available for all and all. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olive Mbuthia, former Deputy Director, KICE and Education Consultant. Peter Munga, Education Researcher with the Kenya Women Teachers Association, and Akelo Misori, Secretary General, KUPPET, our panelists this morning. As we look at back to school, a very hot and thorny topic this year, and more importantly so today, when all the dailies are focusing on matters education, cash crunch as schools reopen, trouble in education, and the big one, KCSE 2023 results being released this morning from Eldoret by the CS for Education, Ezekiel Machogo, and we'll be bringing you that. Thank you.